Thanks, Leslie. I'm presenting the prairie mystical oracular poet Anne Szumigalski, visionary, immigrant, and autodidact. Learning to write in isolation in the Big Muddy Valley in South Saskatchewan, she later delighted in being able to help build an artistic community on the prairies. She helped found the Saskatchewan Writers Guild and Grain magazine and mentored any number of poets. And in her own work, 15 books, several nominated for Governor General's Awards, which she won once. She worked in prose poetry, the long poem, multi-language pieces, and other collaborative works. She advocated for spoken word poetry and illuminated books, and wrote and performed for radio and the theater and with dancers. The bare bones facts: she was born Anne Howard Davis in England in 1922, known as Nancy Davis in her youth. She served with the Red Cross during World War II, including as an interpreter in the liberated concentration camps, an experience she used to inform her one play, the award-winning Zed. She married a former Polish army officer and prisoner of war, Jan Szumigalski, and moved with him and their 2 young children to Saskatchewan in 1951, quite against her will, she said, adding that she was homesick for only 1 year before the prairie spoke to her. Apart from a few years in rural Saskatchewan, she lived the rest of her life in Saskatoon. Her first book, Woman Reading in Bath, was published in 1974 by Doubleday. By choice, she published all of her other books with Prairie Publishers. She died in 1999, and her memory is well kept alive with lecture series and prizes in her name, special issues of magazines, and the like. Anne Szumigalski cited William Blake as her major influence, and George Eliot Clarke refers to her as a bridge between the Blake mode and its strongest Anglo-Canadian practitioners, equaled only by Gwendolyn McEwen, as a poet of mystical bent. Her subjects are dark and earthy, death mixed with sex and human longing. The darkness is infused with humor. A late poem is entitled In Praise of My Own Breasts. She called poetry inspired wickedness. She was a feminist, writing graphically of childbirth, unsentimentally about parenthood, often using strange inversions of fairy tales. But like Blake, she also wrote about the divine nature of language, about angels, visions, and dreams, about Kabbalistic codes and invented language. She grounds poetry in sound, writing in Our Sullen Art that the language of poetry has something to do with the open mouth, the tongue that jumps, up and down like a child on a shed roof calling, ha ha, and who's the dirty rascal now? Ending with lines, not to awaken the child, not to awaken in the child, those savage cries are violent, our pathetic language of poems. She identified herself very much as a prairie poet, but there's not much at first glance in her writing that suggests she's a poet of that place. Rather, she says of Saskatchewan, here was a land where poetry could be written, spoken, and sung for its own sake. It was not so much the land that influenced me, but this extraordinary sky, a sky which has no limits but those that the poetic mind cares to put on it. If I had stayed in Britain, I would certainly have written poetry all my life, but it would have been much more cramped and circumscribed, more conventional and less absurd. I was fortunate to meet her once at the old Saskatchewan Summer School of the Arts, where she came up for the day as a visiting writer, as did Robert Crouch and John Newlove. I remember her as an imposing presence, more exacting than nurturing. A large woman with magnified eyes behind large glasses, a plummy accent, and gray hair piled high. She did tarot readings for a few of the women in the workshop. I wish I'd kept some notes, but I didn't. I just recall it as spooky, but somehow very specific. Judith Krause called her a tongue of heaven blessing all the vowels and consonants on earth. Gary Geddes said, here we have old woman as God, as trickster, turning at times sordid and violent reality into the realms of magic. George Eliot Clarke said, as if necessary, poets, read her. So I'm going to do that and read 3 poems and a short extract from a longer prose poem. So to start with Fennec. My nibs and quills arranged before me on a stained deal table, I am designing the alphabet for a new language called in that tongue speech of foxes, because the consonants fall on the ear like the yipping of Reynard in the hen run, because when a woman enunciates the vowels, they sound the human cry of a vixen in heat. Precisely, I fill in the empty eyes of the letters with slit-shaped green ink. Viridian, it says on the bottle. Lamp black on the tube I pick for the pupils. With a blade, I scrape flaky rust from the window catch, then spit and mix a reddish pigment brush between the letters, cursive loops that crouch and slink across the page. I'm weary with invention, cannot find the strength to reject an idea for punctuation. 2 small triangles, a pair of pricked up ears. Second one is Nettles. When I am old, I will totter along broken pavements, the strings of my boots undone, smelling a bit strong like any fat old woman who has forgotten which day is Tuesday. My bath night, if you like. Stiff my clothes from old dirt, not sweat at my age mumbling the cracked enamel mug. 11 cats playing in my weedy yard, drinking my little ration of milk with me. And withy, the cats circle around my house, at night singly filing in and sleeping on the saggy, stained bed and the chair and the crumbled tabletop. One day they will find me dead. Oh, dead, dead, a stinking old bundle of dead. And in my hand a peeled wand, and in my ear a cricket sitting, telling me stories and predictions and the time of night. The extract is from a longer piece called On the Nature and History of Angels. Oh, that I had wings of angels, sing the children in Sister Gertrude's choir, here to spread and heavenward fly. But do angels have wings other than those that we have imagined for them? No, they swim through space, ozone, and atmosphere, just as jellyfish swim in the oceans. Their messages are precise and clear, but they themselves are amorphous creatures, sometimes opaque, sometimes translucent, armless, finless, not always faceless. Root about in any vacant lot and you'll find them, shards of amber beer bottles, scrunched up gum wrappers, torn rubber safes, plastic-coated diapers, wildflowers in the grass, bird shit in the fountain. Once long ago when I was still her child, my mother told me that angels had beaten a path to her door. I went out to look at the squashed grass. Yes, it was trodden, but whether by children or goats I could not at first make out. Then Molly pointed to the footprints, and they certainly didn't look human. They each have only 3 toes, she explained. If they are not birds, then what's to stop them from being angels? And the last one I'll read is called Your Child Looks Up. Your child looks up at you, offers her hand, the empty one. She holds it flat, straight-fingered, every crease outlined in dirt. Dust of the earth made sticky with the sweat of effort, a whole afternoon at play. Are you daring enough to take such a hand? After all, where has it been? Stroking caterpillars, probing drains, stirring pond ooze, scratching her hot little bum. But hasn't she caught you in your own web of speculation, just so you won't ask what's in the other fist hidden in her drooping knit sleeve? A stallion, an island, an iceberg, a straw hat with green feathers, a train where all the passengers are pigeons, a forbidden book with fine white paper between glossy color plates. Don't be so poetic, keep to the prophetic. It's her desire she is hiding, her desire for the death of her brother conceived in your bed last night.